Hello and welcome to this HESES training video. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at the structure of the HESES workbook. This is defined by the type of data that we need to collect for our funding calculations. To show the classifications of data we gather, and in order to get oriented, we'll take a quick tour of the workbook's 4 tables. This allows us to go on to explore the definitions that you will need to understand and use when completing the HESES workbook. To calculate our formula-based funding allocations for each provider, we need the best possible picture of their provision. We get this with an in-year return, HESES, the Higher Education Students Early Statistics Survey. Some of the data may also be used for planning purposes. We'll discuss how you can download your workbook later in this series, but to begin with, let's list the main classifications that it has, and we'll see then how these are represented in the workbook itself. First, we have mode of study, which of course could be full-time, sandwich year out, or part-time. Then we have what we call subject groupings, and these are determined either by being one of the specific cases that we specify, or if not, then using the common aggregation hierarchy, the CAH. Next, we have level of study, which of course could be undergraduate or postgraduate. Then there's fundability status, and then there's something called new entrants. Now we'll mention the last 2 items here, but we'll defer consideration of them until a later video. They are starters, and it's important to know here that this count is not the same as new entrants, which we just mentioned. And then there's subcontractual status as well. So let's look at where this data fits in the workbook. The list starts with mode of study. And in the HESES workbook, you will see 2 separate tables for these shown here. Table 1 is for full-time and sandwich year out students. Table 2 is for part-time students. Now we'll talk later about the precise definitions for each of these modes of study, and we'll come to the other tabs that you can see shortly. But for the next few slides, we'll use Table 1 as the reference because Table 2 has the same structure. Both Table 1 and Table 2 are divided into Section A and B. Section A is used to record a count of all students in the classifications that we'll come on to shortly. Section B is used to record a subset of these, all of those students that are new entrants. This was in our list of classifications a moment ago, but again we'll return to this later to discuss the definition for entries in Section B. As you can see, Section A and B have the same structure, so to avoid clutter, we'll just focus on Section A for now so that we can zoom in close and get a good look. After mode of study, HESES classifies students according to subject grouping. If you've had some previous experience with HESES, you may be used to seeing price groups here, and indeed you will see them elsewhere in the workbook, but more on that later. To meet our data needs, HESES now uses a different way of classifying the subjects studied. We've retained what are called specific cases, and you can see these highlighted here at the top of the table. Beneath that are the rows for the other means of subject grouping using the common aggregation hierarchy, or CAH. Again, more on this later. Next is level of study, and as you can see, this is split between undergraduate, UG, and postgraduate taught, PGT. Again, if you've had some previous experience with HESES, in old workbooks you may see further subdivisions for both of these levels. But once again, our data needs change and evolve over time, and these are now no longer needed. You can see that the same split is present in both parts of Section A, that is for the specific cases, and for the CAH subject groupings. Once again, the same is true for Section B, which isn't shown here, and for Table 2. Within each of the classifications we've described so far, we need to break the numbers down according to fundability status. So we'll focus on the headings in Section A. Section B isn't shown, but again, it's the same. First, you can see home fee. We'll discuss the definition of this later, but here you can see that it's subdivided between OFS fundable and non-fundable. The counterpart to home fee is overseas. And here we've reinstated section B for new entrants. This is to show that the same structure is replicated here and indeed on other tables in the workbook. Again, we'll discuss the definition for new entrants later. Here is table 3, which is divided into 4 sections, A, B, C and D. Unfortunately, this makes it very wide. Sections C and D relate to multiplication factors, which is a topic we'll deal with in a separate video. For the time being, we will concentrate on sections A and B. Here are sections A and B of table 3. All of the fields are filled in automatically from data entered into tables 1 and 2. There are separate groupings for each mode of study on the left-hand side: full-time, sandwich year-round and part-time. Within those, the table 1 and 2 data has been reclassified according to the price groups that we use for calculating funding allocations. These determine the rate of funding. Again, you may see these in old workbooks. Because the data here automatically comes from tables 1 and 2, you can't enter any data in these fields. However, it's important for us to show them because these numbers link to our funding calculations. They do this via multiplication factors, another subject for later. Like table 3, table 4 has 4 sections, A, B, C and D, although it differs slightly in that section B is divided into sections B1 and B2. As before, for now, we'll concentrate on sections A and B and we'll look at sections C and D on multiplication factors in a later video. Let's focus on sections A and B of table 4. Table 4 is only used to record home fee students on what are known as pre-registration nursing, midwifery and allied health profession courses. For this reason, they are sometimes known as NMAH courses, N-M-A-H, or sometimes just as the health courses. We collect this data to allow us to calculate a specific funding stream for these courses, the NMAH supplement. Most providers won't need to use it unless they run any of these courses, and for those that do, they'll see that section A has a familiar structure to what we have already seen in other parts of the workbook. Section B is divided into B1 to record what are known as starters and B2 to record numbers for students taught under subcontractual relationships. We'll discuss each of these later. There are separate sections for full and part-time students, although the part-time list isn't seen here, it's beneath the full-time entries. For each mode of study, there are rows for all the professions whose courses numbers need to be recorded on this table. As it will only need to be completed by those providers that have health course students, it deserves a video of its own, but it's briefly worth mentioning again that the starters referred to in section B1 are not the same as new entrants mentioned on tables 1 and 2, although there will be, almost certainly there'll be some overlap between these populations. We have a number of resources for providers, and we'll look at the main ones here, but we will also highlight additional resources as we go through this series of recordings. For a high-level view of OFS funding, see our Finance and Funding page, www.officeforstudents.org.uk/for-providers/finance and funding, with the last 2 parts of that URL having the words hyphenated. For an overview of recurrent funding specifically, add the hyphenated words recurrent funding to the last URL, or perhaps an easier way is to use the search function on our main web page and enter recurrent funding. For more detail about funding, see our annual guide to funding, and you can search for that term on our website to find the latest edition. The best place to start for HESES resources is the main HESES page on the OFS website, which can be found at www.officeforstudents.org.uk/HESES, and of course that is HESES. To stay informed about OFS announcements, including those relating to funding, you can sign up for our email alert service. Visit www.officeforstudents.org.uk/sign up for email alerts, and as usual, the last part of that URL is hyphenated. Thank you for listening and watching.